consequences, and crises can be eye-opening experience. Those of us who listen intently at the concerns that are often shared with us collectively on the Lord's Day. The challenges that individuals are having with employment. The problems that people are having in their relationships. The struggle with overcoming confessed sin. Are all the result of living the human experience. This text, to me, it helps me to see that consequences and crises do not always need to be understood as devastation. Something that will overtake me. Instead, perhaps we ought to look at them as this young man did in the text, as an opportunity to recognize how poor his choices were, how troubling he now is because of the decisions that he made in his life. And as a result, allow his consequences and his crisis to cause him to open up his eyes and to explore his state and have enough conviction to do the right thing as a result. We may be having circumstances in our lives that others may know nothing about. We may be burdened right now by the choices and the decisions of loved ones. We may be anxious about the future. We may be troubled by something, but the bottom line is this. Those experiences can help us to open up our eyes and really see the kind of God that we have. A God that loves us in spite of what we have done. A God that cares for us so much that he's always throwing out a longer road to reach us. That's the kind of God that we serve. Now, the scriptures, I believe, are also intended to be instruction. We need to be taught about our place in God's kingdom. And I want to try to put a little emphasis on that, because often the reason why our mind is so available to trouble and to challenge and to hurt and disappointment and above all to sin is because of the way we are using our lives in the present. I believe that when a believer discovers his or her place in the kingdom, using his or her gifts with passion, they end up valuing their purpose. And they experience meaningfulness in their obedience and in their service to God. Now listen to me closely. When you separate obedience and service from the Christian experience, you are embarking upon foolishness. God has called us into a relationship of obedience and into a a relationship of service to his will. Those are ultimate considerations in our willingness to become children of God. In other words, if you miss obedience in service, I believe you miss the plan of salvation. Stay with me if you will. It is clear that a genuine desire to become a child of God precludes that one understands that he or she desires to live a life of obedience to God and possesses a willingness to unconditionally serve him with the gifts and the abilities that don't originate with them, but that come from God. It is there where I sense my purpose. It is there where I experience meaningfulness. Now listen to me closely. Outside of obedience and service, you have no sense of purpose. Whatever purpose you think you're about is an empty purpose. And it does not promote meaningfulness within you. In other words, one of the reasons we got a lot of people walking around this world with no confidence and low self-esteem is because they're living outside of the obedience of God and they're unwilling to serve him simultaneously as it. You see, in your obedience to God, in your service to God, you recognize your purpose. And as a result of being about your purpose, you are experiencing meaningfulness. You don't need some boy to make you feel meaningful. Let the church say amen. You don't need some loose-living gal to rub your lips to make you feel significant. This is why you can say no. Because you're already experiencing meaningfulness. And anybody that's going to come into your life that you're going to allow in can add to the meaningfulness. But they sure enough ain't going to make you meaningful because you are already meaningful in experience while you are in a life of obedience and service to God. We hunger for trouble. We hunger for meaning in the flesh. When we are not in service. When we are not using our gifts. That not only contribute to the kingdom, but identify who we are as a believer. This is called the effective use of self. If you are trying to find personal betterment outside of yourself, you're making a big mistake. If people make you valuable, what's going to happen when they leave you? If things make you feel meaningful, what's going to happen when you lose the stuff? It is a sad day when an individual gives up the responsibility for determining his or her own meaningfulness. Previously, in Philippians chapter 3, again, Paul indicated that believers in general are not living the life that God intends for them as much as they desire to. Now, the inference is clear. As a Christian, I desire to live the life that Christ has called me into. But I recognize that because they interfere with my obedience to God. And they hinder the quality and the depth of service that I could otherwise give Him. We need to think about that. Perhaps by doing some serious thinking, we might be willing to ask God to help us to alter the lifestyle that we have been living that prevents us from being obedient to Him, that interferes with us using our gifts and our abilities to please Him, to serve Him, and also to serve others. Thus, if we look backward at the world, and don't act like we don't, because anytime we experience challenge that we presuppose is more than we can manage, we want to go back to that place of comfort we used to be in. Hello. If perhaps we don't understand, don't observe what God has called us into more fully and more accurately, the demands of holiness, righteousness, and truth, and submission to that can infiltrate, bring corruption into your thinking and your understanding, and then as a result, you want to go back where it's comfortable. You know how that is, right? About 10 o'clock at night, you got a little hungry, went downstairs and cut a piece of that pie. Hello. Comfort food. And you went to bed, about 12 o'clock, some thoughts come in your mind. You go back downstairs and you cut another piece of pie. Let the church say amen. Comfort food. Now you know all that pie ain't good for you. Especially while you're sleeping. We all ought to say amen somewhere in this message. You know it's not going to help you. In the morning you're going to wake up and say, I don't know why I had 2 pieces of pie. Now I got to deal with all that extra shoveling. Hello? I mean, you know I'm trying to be nice. I ain't getting as detailed as perhaps I could. But then we regret what we've done. See, we go back to this emotional stuff because we're not embracing the new challenge with the right understanding. So life ain't getting better, it's getting what? And you call yourself a Christian, stuff getting worse. But keep in mind, that's not God's objective. That's yours. That's yours. You got to work on it. You got to come to grips with that so that will not continue to be the case. Paul indicates that if we look backwards towards the world, we will seek sinfulness. Anything that is not God's will for us is in some way connected with sinfulness. I ain't trying to suggest, hello, that 2 pieces of pie after 10 o'clock is sinful. Hello? But I do know that your body is the temple of the Lord. And I do know you ought to take care of it and treat it right. Amen. And I do know that the Bible calls us to have self-control over the desires and the appetite of the flesh. I do know the Bible calls us to be disciplined beings so that when we go into the world,